A specific set of changes to Windows 11 has made it more difficult, in specific circumstances, for users to install software that comes from outside the Microsoft Store. The changes have been rolled out through specific Windows updates over recent months, have affected specific configurations more than others, and have produced a specific user response that includes both frustration and adaptation. The changes fit within a broader pattern of Microsoft's evolution of Windows in the direction of tighter control over what software runs on the operating system, with specific implications for users, for software developers, and for the broader ecosystem of independent software that has historically been a core part of the Windows experience. I want to walk you through what the specific changes are, which users are most affected, what the specific technical mechanisms involve, what the practical workarounds are, and what the broader direction suggests about where Windows is headed. Let me start with what has actually changed. The specific changes include several elements that have been rolled out in combination. The first is the default activation of a feature called Smart App Control on new installations and on some existing installations that meet specific criteria. Smart App Control is a specific security feature that uses Microsoft's cloud-based reputation service to determine whether a given application should be allowed to run. Applications that Microsoft's reputation service does not recognize, or that it recognizes but has not specifically approved, are blocked from running. The user, when attempting to run such an application, receives a specific dialog explaining that Smart App Control has blocked the application. The second change is a tightening of the Smart Screen filter, which has been a feature of Windows for years, but which has become more aggressive in its specific criteria for flagging applications. Smart Screen now flags a broader range of applications, including many applications, from small developers who have not gone through the specific Microsoft-required processes to establish reputation. The specific warning that Smart Screen shows can be bypassed by users who click through specific dialogues, but the specific design of the dialogues has become more intimidating, with language that more strongly discourages proceeding. The third change is the default behavior of the operating system when encountering certain categories of installers. Installers that are not digitally signed with a Microsoft-recognized code signing certificate receive specific additional warnings. Installers that are signed but not recognized by the reputation system receive warnings of a different type. Installers that are recognized but have specific characteristics that trigger the heuristic filters receive still different warnings. The specific landscape of warnings has become more complex. The fourth change is the specific behavior of the Windows Defender antivirus, which has become more aggressive in its assessment of software from non-store sources. Some applications that previously ran without issue are now flagged by Defender, sometimes with specific warnings and sometimes with quiet quarantine. The specific assessment criteria have changed in ways that Microsoft has not fully explained. The fifth change is the default settings for certain aspects of the Windows installation. New Windows 11 installations include specific default settings that are more restrictive of third-party software than previous defaults were. Users who accept the default settings during installation find themselves in a more restricted environment than they may realize. Taken together, these changes have produced situations where specific users, particularly those who install software that is not widely used or that comes from small developers, encounter significant friction when trying to install the software they want. The specific friction ranges from additional warning dialogues that require confirmation, to outright blocking that requires specific administrator intervention to override, to quiet quarantine that requires the user to know that their installation was blocked in order to investigate. Which users are most affected? Users who install software only from the Microsoft Store are essentially unaffected. The Microsoft Store has its own approval process, and applications distributed through the store are generally not affected by the additional warnings and blocks. Users who install software primarily from well-known large developers are mostly unaffected. Software from Adobe, from Autodesk, from major game companies, from major productivity companies, has established reputation in Microsoft systems and is generally recognized without additional friction. Users who install software from small developers, from open source projects, or from niche categories are the most affected. These categories of software often do not have established reputation in Microsoft systems, do not have the specific digital signing that would avoid warnings, and are flagged at higher rates by the heuristic filters. Users who depend on such software, including developers, system administrators, and users of specialized tools, encounter the friction regularly. Users who install software from independent developers, small businesses, or individual contributors are similarly affected. The barrier to establishing reputation in Microsoft systems is significant, requiring specific certifications, specific volumes of downloads, and specific periods of time. Small developers cannot easily satisfy these requirements, with the result that their software is at higher risk of being flagged. The technical mechanisms that underlie these changes are several. Smart App Control operates by checking each application against Microsoft's cloud-based reputation database before allowing it to run. The database contains information about what applications are known, what their reputation is, and whether they should be blocked. Applications that are not in the database are treated cautiously. The specific algorithms that determine how cautious are not publicly documented in detail. SmartScreen similarly operates by checking URLs, downloaded files, and executed applications against reputation data. The specific algorithms have been tightened over time, with more applications being flagged in the current configuration than in previous configurations. Windows Defender operates through multiple specific mechanisms, including signature-based detection, behavioral analysis, and cloud-delivered protection. Each mechanism has specific criteria that have been tightened over time. The specific default settings for new installations reflect a specific design philosophy that Microsoft has adopted, which is to err on the side of restriction rather than on the side of openness. The specific philosophy is defensible from a pure security perspective, because restricting untrusted applications does reduce the risk of malware. The specific cost, which is the reduced ability of users to run applications they have chosen, is part of the trade-off. Let me describe the practical workarounds for users who encounter these restrictions. The first workaround is to adjust the specific settings. Smart App Control can be disabled in Windows security settings. The specific setting is under App and Browser Control, and the user can choose to turn it off. SmartScreen has similar controls that allow the user to reduce its aggressiveness or to disable it entirely. Windows Defender can be configured with specific exclusions for applications that the user trusts. These adjustments, taken together, can restore much of the previous behavior. The second workaround is to use the specific administrator features for running blocked applications. When an application is blocked, the user can often run it, with administrator privileges and specific confirmation steps, which will allow it to execute. The specific confirmation steps are inconvenient but functional. The third workaround is to use alternative installation methods. For some applications, the installation can be done through specific methods that bypass the restrictions. Installing from a portable version rather than from an installer, extracting an installer manually rather than running it, or using specific developer tools can avoid some of the specific restrictions. The fourth workaround is to use a different operating system for the specific activities that require unrestricted software installation. Linux does not have these specific restrictions, and Linux distributions allow users to install any software they want through standard mechanisms. For users whose workflow depends on running a wide variety of software, Linux may be a better fit than Windows in its current configuration. The broader direction that these changes suggest is worth examining. The specific direction is toward a more controlled software ecosystem on Windows. The changes make it easier to install approved software and harder to install unapproved software. The specific set of approved software is larger than just the Microsoft Store, but it is specific, and it is under Microsoft's control. The specific software that is outside this approved set is progressively more difficult to use. This direction has specific implications for software developers. Small developers are effectively being pushed toward Microsoft's approval processes, which require specific investments of time and money. Developers who cannot or will not make these investments are at a disadvantage. The specific diversity of software available for Windows, which has historically been a strength of the platform, is at risk of being reduced. For users, the direction has implications for what software they will have access to in the future. The software that is approved will remain accessible. The software that is not approved will become progressively less accessible through the combination of warnings, blocks, and operating system default behaviors. For the broader ecosystem of independent software development, the direction is concerning. Windows has historically been a platform where anyone could develop and distribute software. The specific move toward controlled distribution, which the changes I have described represent, is a move toward a model that is more like the mobile application stores, where all software has to be approved by the platform vendor. Whether this direction is desirable depends on the perspective. From a pure security perspective, it reduces certain categories of risk. From the perspective of user autonomy and software ecosystem diversity, it reduces important freedoms. The specific trade-off is a judgment that Microsoft is making on behalf of users, and the specific direction that Microsoft has chosen may not align with what all users want. For users who want to retain the ability to run any software they choose, the specific response is to be aware of the settings, to configure them appropriately, and to consider whether the specific trade-offs of Windows continue to align with their preferences. For users who find that Windows no longer provides the flexibility they need, the alternative of Linux remains available. Subscribe for the next video, which provides a specific walkthrough of the settings that control these restrictions and the specific adjustments that restore more flexibility, along with the specific considerations for when each adjustment is appropriate. And in the comments, tell me whether you have encountered these restrictions and how you have responded. The specific experiences of many users are what inform the broader picture of how these changes are affecting the Windows ecosystem.